The woman once known for her bright smile and fiery spirit is now at the center of one of the darkest royal storms yet. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess who fought cancer twice and stood by Prince Andrew through scandal after scandal, has reportedly broken down after a shocking palace insider exposed the truth about her condition. Between losing her royal home, watching her ex-husband face fresh investigations, and battling her own emotional collapse, it feels like the walls are closing in. But after everything she's survived, could this be the moment that finally breaks her? What's going on now? Sarah Ferguson's life has never been short of headlines, but the latest ones feel heavier than ever. Once the vibrant Duchess who could light up a royal event with her laughter and charm, she's now facing the harsh glare of public scrutiny all over again. Insiders say she's on the edge, emotionally and professionally, caught in the middle of a royal storm that refuses to pass. Her story, once filled with second chances and quiet reinvention, has turned into a tense waiting game. And this time, even her usual resilience might not be enough to carry her through. According to Marie Claire, the pressure on Sarah has reached breaking point. Behind the carefully polite smiles and upbeat public appearances, people close to her say she's deeply anxious, worn out, and uncertain about her future. Years of loyalty to Prince Andrew, years of trying to stay relevant without crossing royal boundaries, all of it is now colliding with a reality she can no longer control. She's not just dealing with the emotional toll of being tied to a scandal-ridden ex-husband, she's also dealing with the practical fallout of losing the one thing she's clung to for decades, her royal safety net.
Ferguson, she's going to have to find her own home after she and Andrew were told to leave the Royal Lodge. Where does she sit in all of this, and what's her future look like?
It's not hard to see why she's unraveling. The British press has been relentless, the public's patience is wearing thin, and even the palace, once quietly tolerant of her quirks and comebacks, is pulling away. Sarah's living situation at the Royal Lodge, her longtime home with Prince Andrew, is now uncertain as the king reportedly pushes for changes following renewed scrutiny over Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The comfort she once had under the royal umbrella is slipping away. For a woman who's spent much of her life orbiting that world, sometimes embraced, sometimes exiled, it feels like the floor is shifting beneath her feet. But the most interesting twist in this story is that Sarah's so-called condition isn't just about her health, even though that alone would be enough to test anyone. After surviving 2 separate cancer battles, breast cancer in 2023 and melanoma in 2024, she seemed ready to turn a corner, to use her experience to inspire others. Yet as she began that recovery, new royal revelations dragged her back into chaos. Her condition has come to mean something far more complicated. A fragile mix of emotional stress, financial instability, public judgment, and the loss of a place she once considered home. It's the kind of strain that doesn't show up in medical reports, but leaves visible cracks all the same. The royal family, it seems, is quietly distancing itself from both Andrew and Sarah, hoping to draw a clear line between the current monarchy and the scandals of the past. That means Sarah is being forced to navigate her next steps alone, with no official title, no guaranteed residence, and a reputation that's once again under fire. She's a woman who's spent decades learning how to survive the fallout from her own mistakes, but this time, the mistakes aren't all hers. They're part of a wider royal mess, one that threatens to erase what little stability she's fought to rebuild. So where does that leave her? A former Duchess standing on the edge of another public reckoning, with fewer allies than ever and a world watching to see whether she breaks or bounces back again. For years, Sarah Ferguson's story has been one of resilience. But even resilience has its limits. The question now is simple but painful. After everything she's been through, can she really survive one more storm? Or is this the moment when even the strongest Duchess finally runs out of second chances? Background: Sarah's recent health and royal life milestones.
This morning, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, opening up on her podcast Tea Talks, publicly revealing for the first time her breast cancer diagnosis and urging others to get checked.
Sarah Ferguson's story over the past 2 years reads like something out of a drama. full of strength, shock, and the kind of quiet endurance that most people never see. In 2023, she faced one of the scariest moments of her life when doctors told her she had breast cancer. The news came like a punch to the gut. She underwent surgery and an intense round of treatment, all while keeping her trademark humor and warmth alive for the public. But behind the smiles and interviews, those close to her say it was one of the hardest battles she's ever fought. She called it a wake-up call, a moment that forced her to slow down and rethink what really mattered. For a woman who had spent decades in the spotlight, often for the wrong reasons, it became a deeply personal fight, not just for health, but for peace.
Now to Duchess Sarah Ferguson revealing her diagnosis of skin cancer. Maggie Rulli has the very latest. And Maggie, of course, this news comes right after she beat breast cancer just months ago.
Just as she was beginning to heal, 2024 brought another cruel twist. A diagnosis of malignant melanoma, a serious form of skin cancer. It felt almost unfair, like life was testing her twice in a row. Sarah later said it felt like a bomb going off in her life, a shock that made her question how much one person could really take. Yet even through the fear, she found strength again. Friends say she leaned on her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, who stood by her side every step of the way. She refused to let the illness define her. After another round of treatment and painful waiting, her doctors finally gave her the words she'd been longing to hear, all clear. It was relief, joy, and exhaustion all at once.
About her diagnosis on her new podcast, Tea Talks with the Duchess and Sarah. It's going to air in the UK on Monday, so today your time, I guess.
Called it a second chance. A reminder that no matter what the headlines said, she was still standing. After beating cancer twice, Sarah shifted her focus toward helping others. She began using her platform to raise awareness for early detection, speaking openly about how easily people overlook warning signs. She wanted others to see her story not as a tragedy, but as proof that resilience is real.
Importance of checking the size, shape, color, and texture, and emergence of new moles that can be a sign of melanoma, and urge anyone who is reading this to be diligent.
In interviews, she talked about gratitude for her doctors, her family, and even the lessons that came with fear. It was a new kind of Sarah Ferguson, softer in tone but sharper in perspective, someone who'd been through fire and came out wiser. But while her health improved, the royal part of her life was quietly crumbling in the background. Though she and Prince Andrew divorced back in 1996, they'd continued to share a home at the Royal Lodge for decades. It was one of the most unusual arrangements in the royal family. Two exes living together, raising children, attending events, and publicly supporting each other through thick and thin. To many, they were proof that love can survive even after a marriage ends. To others, it was a symbol of dependence, one that tied Sarah to Andrew's growing scandals, whether she liked it or not. That connection is now becoming a burden. With Prince Andrew under renewed scrutiny for his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and pressure mounting on the monarchy to take firmer action, Sarah's world has started to unravel again. Reports say she's been asked to find another home after years of living under the royal roof. Her financial independence, which she worked hard to rebuild through books and business ventures, is being tested all over again. And just when she thought her health battles were behind her, she's facing a new kind of survival, emotional, social, and reputational. Sarah Ferguson has rebuilt herself before, but this time feels different. She's no longer just the ex-wife of a disgraced royal or the Duchess who survived cancer. She's a woman standing at the crossroads between her old royal life and a future she has to carve out on her own. For someone who's spent so long defined by her relationships, her title, and her past, the challenge now is to define what comes next. Not as Duchess Sarah, but simply as Sarah. And that might be the hardest chapter yet. The palace truth revealed. What insiders say, it's the kind of royal truth that no one wants to say out loud, but palace insiders already have. According to reports, Sarah Ferguson has reached a breaking point behind the palace gates. One source described her as completely on the edge, saying she feels cornered, anxious, and unsure of where to turn next. The once beloved Duchess, who weathered 2 cancer battles and decades of public criticism, is now facing something far more isolating: the quiet, painful realization that she's being pushed out of the royal circle she once called home. Insiders told Marie Claire that Sarah has nowhere to go and that people don't want to be associated with her anymore. It's a brutal sentence for a woman who's spent her whole life trying to prove she still belongs. Those close to her say the pressure has been building for months. The renewed investigation calls into Prince Andrew's ties with Jeffrey Epstein have dragged her name right back into the headlines. Members of Parliament are now urging Scotland Yard to reopen the case, a move that not only threatens Andrew's fragile position, but also casts a shadow over Sarah, who has always stood by him publicly. Even though she wasn't directly involved, the association alone has become toxic. Every time a news story breaks, her own reputation takes another hit. It's guilt by proximity. And in the court of public opinion, that's often enough to end a career. What makes things worse is that the palace, once quietly protective of her, seems to be stepping away. For years, her living arrangement with Prince Andrew at the Royal Lodge had been an open secret, a strange but stable coexistence that allowed her to stay close to family life without official royal duties. But according to insiders, that protection is fading fast. With King Charles tightening royal budgets and distancing the monarchy from scandal, Sarah has reportedly been told to prepare for life outside royal walls. The message is clear: her time under the royal roof is running out. For someone who's already lost titles, money, and status, this latest shift feels like the final cut. Sources told Marie Claire that she's deeply worried about her finances. Her publishing and media ventures, once a lifeline, are shaky. Her health scares slowed her down, and the fallout from Andrew's controversies makes new business partners hesitant to work with her. One insider summed it up bluntly: she's been through illness, loss, and now isolation. She feels abandoned. That's the heart of her so-called condition. Not just physical frailty, but the emotional toll of being quietly erased from the royal world she's spent decades orbiting. The palace isn't commenting publicly, but actions speak louder than press statements. Andrew's titles are gone, his invitations have dried up, and the family gatherings that once included Sarah are happening without her. Every new headline, every whisper about Epstein, every parliamentary statement makes her situation worse. She's watching her old life crumble in slow motion, knowing there's no one left inside the palace willing to pull her back in. For years, Sarah Ferguson's resilience was her trademark. She survived scandals, divorce, and ridicule, always finding a way to reinvent herself. But this time feels different. The revelation that the palace is stepping away, that she no longer has a place or a protector, strikes at the core of who she is. Behind the royal smiles and polite statements, the truth is painfully clear. She's not just losing her home or her reputation, she's losing her place in the story she's been part of her whole life. And for someone like Sarah, that kind of exile is the hardest condition to heal from. Sarah's personal condition, emotional, financial, reputational, Sarah Ferguson's so-called condition isn't something that can be captured by a single headline or diagnosis. It's deeper than that, a mix of emotional exhaustion, financial pressure, and reputational wounds that just won't heal. Insiders say she's struggling on all fronts, and the cracks are starting to show. For a woman who's spent decades balancing royal expectations with personal chaos, the foundation she's standing on feels shakier than ever. Emotionally, the biggest blow has been losing the one place that made her feel safe, the Royal Lodge. For years, that home wasn't just a property, it was her refuge, the one constant after a lifetime of public storms. Even after divorcing Prince Andrew in 1996, Sarah stayed there, raising her daughters and carving out a quiet life far from the palace's strict formality. But now, with Andrew under renewed pressure and reportedly being forced to leave, she's facing the harsh reality that the doors might close for her too. Marie-Claire reported that she's been left completely on edge, trying to process what comes next. For someone who's fought cancer twice and built her life around stability, being told she may have nowhere to go feels like a cruel twist. It's not just about losing a house, it's about losing her emotional anchor, her sense of belonging, the one bit of normal she managed to hold on to in a royal world that never truly accepted her. Financially, things don't look much brighter. Over the past few years, Sarah has worked hard to rebuild her career through books, speaking engagements, and business ventures. Her children's books and lifestyle projects once gave her both income and purpose. But according to palace insiders, that too is now under strain. With her name once again tangled in the headlines about Prince Andrew and the Epstein scandal, potential deals have started slipping away. Publishers and sponsors are reportedly hesitant to associate with her brand while the royal drama continues to unfold. Marie-Claire revealed that she's increasingly worried about her finances, especially as she may have to find a new home without royal support. It's a familiar nightmare for Sarah. Financial uncertainty has haunted her since the 1990s, when her spending habits and debts made tabloid fodder. Back then, she bounced back with charm and hustle. This time, the climate feels different. The world isn't as forgiving, and the royal connection that once opened doors now seems to close them. And then there's her reputation, something she's been trying to rebuild for years, only to watch it crumble again. Her past ties to Jeffrey Epstein have resurfaced in the wake of the new investigations. Reports from E! Online reminded the public of a 2011 email where she referred to Epstein as a friend even after his conviction. Though she later apologized and called the association a mistake, the damage lingers. In today's world, reputations can collapse in a single headline, and Sarah's history is once again being re-examined under a harsher light. Every story about Andrew pulls her name back into the conversation, not as an innocent bystander, but as someone too close to the chaos for comfort. Put together, these pressures, emotional, financial, and reputational, form a perfect storm. Sarah's condition isn't just about her past health battles. It's about being emotionally cornered, financially strained, and publicly exposed all at once. She's a woman who's survived cancer, but is now fighting a different kind of sickness, one made of stress, loss, and loneliness. And while she's always managed to reinvent herself, this moment feels heavier than any before. The palace has turned cold, her safety net is unraveling, and her future looks uncertain. It's a heartbreaking reality for someone who's already faced so many battles. And this time, the scars aren't just physical. What this means for her future.
Happy with that. There was certainly calls for her to stand on her own 2 feet. Why on earth was she still living in a royal residence, even though she's been divorced from Andrew for 30-odd years? So,
for the first time in decades, Sarah Ferguson's future looks completely uncertain. And that's saying something for a woman who has lived through royal scandals, tabloid takedowns, and 2 cancer diagnoses. Insiders say the next chapter of her life will be written without the royal safety net that's quietly cushioned her for years. The days of having a royal cushion to fall back on are over. With her living arrangements at the Royal Lodge coming to an end and the palace distancing itself from both her and Prince Andrew, Sarah will have to stand entirely on her own 2 feet. That means new housing, new income streams, and a new sense of independence, but also a harsh reality check about just how far she's drifted from the royal circle she once moved so freely within. According to Marie-Claire, the situation has left her completely on the edge. Losing the Royal Lodge isn't just a logistical issue, it's emotional. That estate was her base, the one constant amid years of chaos. For nearly 3 decades, it was where she raised her daughters and rebuilt her life after her divorce. Now, being told she'll have to move out as Andrew's privileges fade feels like the final severing of an invisible tie to the royal world. The New York Post confirmed she's already looking for alternative housing, signaling that this time there's no royal bailout on the horizon. For someone who has always leaned on loyalty, love, and proximity to family, the prospect of starting from scratch again, especially at this stage in life, is daunting. But this moment of loss could also be a strange kind of freedom. Without the weight of royal expectations or the constant shadow of palace control, Sarah finally has the chance to define her own future on her own terms. The question is, will she? Insiders have hinted that she's been quietly considering writing another memoir, one that could pull back the curtain on her years inside the royal system. According to the Jang, palace aides are terrified at the possibility, calling such a book very harmful, and it's easy to see why. Sarah has always been candid, emotional, and unfiltered in public, traits that make her both beloved and unpredictable. If she decides to tell everything about Andrew, the royal family's inner workings, and her own emotional battles, it could send shockwaves through the monarchy all over again. Professionally, Sarah will have to lean heavily on her writing, speaking engagements, and charity work to rebuild both her finances and her reputation. Her brand has always been tied to resilience. The Duchess who fell got back up and smiled again. That narrative still works, but only if she can reclaim control of her story. Her recent health battles have made her more relatable than ever, and if she channels that authenticity into advocacy for cancer awareness or women's health, she could win back public sympathy. People love a comeback, especially one that feels genuine. The next few months will reveal which version of Sarah emerges. The survivor who rebuilds, or the woman overwhelmed by scandal. Watch for new public appearances, especially with charities and media interviews. Those will signal how she plans to position herself moving forward. If she appears confident, open, and focused on purpose-driven work, it could mark the start of her redemption arc. But if the pressure pushes her into silence or isolation, it might confirm what insiders fear most, that she's reached her limit. In the end, Sarah Ferguson's future depends on how she chooses to rewrite her story. The palace may have shut its doors, but her pen still works, her voice still carries, and her instinct to fight remains. Whether she uses those tools to rebuild or retaliate will determine how history remembers her. As a fallen duchess clinging to the past, or as a woman who finally found freedom after the crown. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.